Tuesday for the start of their business fraud trial. He plans to defend his management of Trump Incorporated. After Congress approved a 45-day spending bill averting a government shutdown, a leadership war opened in the House. Speaker Kevin McCarthy's fighting words were to bring it on. And the Powerball jackpot crept above $1 billion last night, putting today's total at $1.04 billion. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
Welcome to Stinchfield. So once again, Republican leadership failed us. This stopgap 45-day budget deal hands Nancy Pelosi and her big spending Democrats a victory. Again, here is how you know the deal is bad. Both Pelosi and Speaker McCarthy are claiming victory, both of them.
Yesterday, we had a victory in the continuing resolution. It was a victory for Democrats, a defeat for the MAGAs.
I'm sure every bet you had was government was going to shut down. I don't know how many times you're going to count us out. But if there's one thing you should start understanding, not just that I'll never give up, but I'm a type of conservative that wants to get things done.
So again, you got Nancy Pelosi and McCarthy both claiming victory here. That's the tip-off. Here's the reality. We will now continue to spend at current levels, which is way too much, and we will do this all over again in less than 45 days. Yes, we pulled funding for Ukraine, but that's the only victory we got. No border security, no energy independence, no spending cuts, and Politico has reported that Speaker Kevin McCarthy struck a backroom deal with Democrats that will allow for future funding for Ukraine once the spending bill is ironed out. So whose team is he on? Well, he answered that question over the weekend.
So if you have members in your conference that won't let you vote for appropriation bills, doesn't want an omnibus, and won't vote for a stopgap measure, so the only answer is to shut down and not pay our troops, I don't want to be a part of that team.
Well, here's the problem, though, Speaker McCarthy. You don't seem to be on our team, the team of limited government, America First conservatives. In fact, not many in Congress are on that team. Right now, I bet you there isn't 10% of Congress who believe in the founders' vision of limited government and ultra-secure borders. When it comes to the budget, I would rather put up the fight now than prolong it. Use a shutdown as a bargaining chip to cut spending, secure the border, and restore America to energy independence. Those three things must be tied to any future spending bills. How often do we talk about this? Every night. If we brought oil back down to $45 a barrel, Vladimir Putin couldn't afford to invade anyone. It would end the war in Ukraine almost instantly. Why would we financially break Russia with low oil prices? That's what we need to be doing. And we wouldn't have to send any more aid to Ukraine. That's the key. Break them with the oil. But not this administration. Think what else energy independence would do, by the way. It would bring inflation back down here in the United States. It would put more money in all of your pockets. Combine those things, and the economy takes off again. But everything about this current 45-day stopgap spells uncertainty. The markets hate uncertainty. It would have been far better, in my opinion, to stand and fight now rather than later. And speaking of fighting now, another battle is brewing. The battle to oust Speaker McCarthy. That quest is being led by Florida's Matt Gaetz.
At this time, next week, Kevin McCarthy is still Speaker of the House. It will be because the Democrats bailed him out, and he can be their Speaker, not mine.
Well, I think Matt Gaetz will be hard-pressed to find Republican votes needed to oust McCarthy. And quite frankly, we don't want ourselves being beholden to Democrats, putting ourselves in a spot where we're relying on Democrats for everything, to save McCarthy or to oust him. If you watch this show, you know I am no fan of the Speaker. I think he abandoned the deal he made with conservatives to allow him to take the role of Speaker. He didn't live up to any of the deals that he said he would. Single-issue spending bills, rules of order, real action on Joe Biden corruption. McCarthy responded to the Gates threat.
I want to secure the border. He wants to secure interviews. That's okay. Let him do that. But the only way he can be successful is if Democrats go along with him. I think this job and this country and this Congress is too important. Let's finish the work we have to do. Let's focus on the task before us, and let's keep going.
So Matt Gaetz says that he will offer up the motion to vacate the chair. It only takes one member of Congress to do that. He says he'll do it this week. We shall see how that play out. Now, I will acknowledge that the earlier bill last week to fund the government was better than what we passed over the weekend. See, it included 8% across the board cuts, money for border security, things we didn't get in this new bill. But it also included Ukraine money, which is why I would have voted no for it back then. If I had to choose, I'd rather have that bill, though, than this one. But when that bill failed, I was under the impression that members of Congress would hold firm on the shutdown threats. Instead, to me, it looks like they all chickened out. So while some in conservative media want to blame, quote, hardliners like Gaetz and the other conservative Republicans for the recent failure, I want to remind everyone, let's remember who put us in this position. That is Republican leadership, Speaker McCarthy and his crew. They had 9 months to come up with a plan, and they failed to do so. 9 months to bring individual funding bills forward. We never should have been in this position in the first place. Well, joining me now to discuss this, Heritage Foundation's director of the Grover M. Herman Center for the Federal Budget, Richard Stern, is back with us. Richard, welcome back to the show.
Hey, always a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Well, Richard, what is your response to what happened over the weekend and where we go from here?
You know, I agree with you. Look, I will say this. Conservatives actually, through a lot of fighting, a lot of struggle, managed to get the first bill you were talking about, the one that actually dropped spending by $130 billion, that had an 8.1% across the board cut to non-defense discretionary spending, that had robust border security funding in there. So, you know, that originally, you know this, leadership wanted just a continuation of flat funding. They wanted the thing that I agree with you, they've caved in and given the left on. But, you know, all of those wins conservatives have gotten, they've gotten because we've had some backbone. We've had groups, I think, like the Heritage Foundation. They've given them support. And we're seeing that in the full year approach bills as well that are also cutting spending by about $70 billion. So, look, I agree with you. This is kick the can down the road. This was, you know, disappointing. But I think there's a lot of room for optimism here. We're making wins here. We haven't had in over a decade, to be perfectly honest.
So, what is the win? I don't see a win here, Richard. None.
Well, here's the thing. I will give you this. We have not passed a bill that cuts spending, but we have had all of these bills that have gone through the House that would cut spending. We've had all of these agreements out of the Republican conference that would cut spending. Now, look, you might be listening to me, people watching at home being like, what is the good of the House passing something that cuts spending if the president doesn't sign the law? But I'll tell you this, though. We have had over a decade of both chambers, both parties in both chambers, just rubber stamping spending increase after rubber stamping spending increase with no muss or fuss, no public debate over it. The fact that we've had conservatives stand up and cause all the things we're talking about, that we've had conservatives stand up and force the House and force Kevin McCarthy and the rest of leadership to put up bills that actually make significant cuts to spending, all of that is a sea change. All of that is representative of a growing, galvanized conservative movement that will not back down until we have saved this country.
The problem, though, Richard, I think you'll agree with me on this, is the American people are frustrated. Yeah, we see these bills they're voting on, but actually we're not really passing any of them through. They're not even making it to the Senate, much less the president's desk. We're not seeing any real meaningful cuts because McCarthy's standing in the way. He had 9 months to figure out a plan. They couldn't come to terms, so they did this game in Washington, and you know it well, where you got to wait till the very last minute. And I believe this game is all by design. I believe the lobbyists love this game, this last minute wait, and then, we'll just throw everything at the wall and we'll just have to pass it to fund it for another 45 days, and the lobbyist clients all get their way. The American people are sick and tired of doing business like that.
Absolutely. Look, the D.C. cartel is the enemy here. The D.C. cartel runs the leadership of both parties. They do exactly what you're talking about. Where does all this new funding goes? It goes to the regulators that regulate against their competitors. It goes to subsidies that go to their businesses, not to others, right? The federal government has all of this money that it steals from hardworking Americans that fund the infrastructure of the left, that fund the regulators, that fund the subsidies, that benefit their friends over good, hardworking Americans. So this is another, to your point, this is yet again the process of the D.C. cartel stealing your money, bankrolling their friends. But the crack in the dam here, so to speak, is the House conservatives have finally stepped up to the plate. They've shown a vision of how to get from under this. And, I'll tell you this, the dawn's always, it's always bleakest right before the dawn. It's always darkest then. This might be that. We're finally seeing conservatives stand up, making it public, not just letting the D.C. cartel and their lobbyist friends do whatever they want, whenever they want.
All right. My prediction is not quite as rosy. I think you're going to see this disagreement play out over the next 45 days. You may see a speaker fight that'll probably go nowhere because I don't think Matt Gaetz is going to get the votes that he needs, and Republicans aren't going to want to rely on Democrats. But that'll be the focus because that's a sensational thing that the media is going to love to focus on all of that. We're going to be right back in the same position 43 days from now, worrying about what's going to happen. And I think in the end, Nancy Pelosi is going to be claiming victory again.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of likelihood to that one. But here's what I would say, though, right? We didn't know we were going to get those concessions out of McCarthy in January. We didn't know that we were going to get the debt ceiling deal that put in new spending caps. Who knows? We didn't know we were going to get the Builder Act, right, which is the first deregulatory reform that's been signed into law in the entire time I've been in the D.C. We got that as a real concession to make it much easier to build things in this country as part of the debt ceiling deal. So, I'll tell you this. I think we're going to get some wins here. They might be minimal, but I think we're going to get them. But I'll tell you this. We are not going to save this country from the scourge of inflation unless we stand up and we keep the pressure up. And I think if we do, there'll be a day where all of a sudden everything comes tumbling down and we win. And we just need to keep the pressure up until we get there.
I think that day is when President Trump is elected back into office, and finally we can get some of these things back on track here. Richard Stern, I appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you for coming on tonight. As always, good to see you.
Always a pleasure. Good seeing you too.
All right, absolutely. All right, folks, so there's other stuff going on over the weekend. So much is crazy, right? So while the mainstream media wants to focus on the Republican turmoil, as I told you they will with the Matt Gaetz situation and McCarthy, there is another case in Congress that deserves, I believe, criminal prosecution. At least if equal justice is something we should all strive for. Radical New York Congressman Jamal Bowman. Do you see this? He is a man who was a school principal for much of his adult life. Look at him on your screen there. That is him pulling a fire alarm to stop the stopgap funding measure vote. We can only assume it is because that measure had no money for Ukraine. So the radical decides to pull the fire alarm. He is caught on camera doing it, pulling the alarm, insisting now that it was a mistake, that he was trying to get the door open that was marked closed. You can see the signs there in the window. It's a fire exit. I don't buy any of this. So that dude was a former school principal. Any school principal knows all about kids pulling fire alarms. They know how those fire alarms work, as Republican Congressman George Santos demonstrated.
Hi, boys and girls. This is Congressman George Santos. This here is a fire alarm. If you lift this part here and pull this down, you trigger an alarm. Don't do it. Stay good, kids.
All right, so Santos is in the middle of some controversy himself. Democrats want him ousted because of these illegal challenges that he faces. But here's the real deal. The reality is pulling a fire alarm to obstruct an official proceeding is a crime. Now, I use those words on purpose because they're very important words. How do I know that's a crime? because prosecutors charged 320 January 6th defendants, including President Trump, with that obstruction of an official proceeding charge. 320 of them. See, the difference here is that Jamal Bowman really did engage in obstruction. Yet the leftist loons and goons always find a way to defend their own. Here is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going after George Santos, while of course defending Bowman's pulling of the fire alarm.
And they are protecting someone who has lied to the American people, lied to the United States House of Representatives, lied to congressional investigators, but they're filing a motion to expel a member who, in a moment of panic, was trying to escape a vestibule. Give me a break.
No, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez needs to give us the break. First off, it wasn't a vestibule. It was literally a door. He could have walked any other direction. He, as a member of Congress, has been there long enough to know how to get in and out of that building. He knew exactly what he was doing. In fact, Jamal Bowman is showing no remorse for pulling a fire alarm and trying to obstruct an official proceeding. Listen to him.
You know, I don't know why this has gotten so much attention. I was literally just in a rush to go vote, man. That's all it was.
Are you afraid of any repercussions, either from leadership or from legally from Capitol Police?
I mean, listen, I take responsibility for what I did, you know, but like I said, I was in a rush to go vote, and, you know, the investigation will sort everything else out.
You know, January 6th defendant says, I don't know what the big deal is. I was just in a rush to let my voices be heard. We wandered around the Capitol. We didn't destroy anything. The large majority, 99% of the people there didn't destroy anything. And yet now they're getting 2-3 years in prison for obstructing an official proceeding. Jamal Bowman ought to face the same crime as the January 6th defendants, or lower all of those sentences, and let's just be fair about things, okay? He needs to be scolded at the very least. I think actually criminal charges are warranted, though. Pulling a fire alarm, you know how many people could get hurt after something like that? It's despicable. All right, do you get the feeling, folks, that something unthinkable is going to happen soon? Sometimes I get this feeling. With all the distractions and the smoke screens and the media, we probably will not see it coming. That's why it's smart to invest in emergency food today. A wise man once said, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Well, My Patriot Supply is the nation's leader in emergency food storage. Here's what I want you to do. Go to our website, preparewithrav.com. That is preparewithrav.com. You'll save 25% on My Patriot Supply's 3-month emergency food kits. You'll enjoy a wide variety of delicious meals, providing over 2,000 calories a day for optimum strength under stress. Stock up now before everyone else panics. Free shipping is automatic, and your order ships fast. So again, go to preparewithrav.com. That's preparewithrav.com. All right, coming up, President Trump appeared in court today, and he had a lot to say about it. That's in New York. President Trump with some very strong words for a radical prosecutor and a radical judge. Well, folks, welcome back. So President Trump was once again hauled back into court today. Basically, I want you to look at this video of the judge, okay? The video of the judge tells the entire story that you need to know about this case. Look at the crap-eating grin on this guy's face as he gets ready to continue the witch hunt against President Trump. All smiles as he tries to destroy everything about President Trump. Look, he's already ruled that President Trump was liable for, quote, business fraud. This is ridiculous. It's outrageous. This latest slew of charges that they're going before the judge for during this trial is for like 8 other charges. It doesn't even matter what these charges are. They're all ridiculous and they're all out of line. This is cut one, President Trump talking about this today.
So very simply put, it's a witch hunt. It's a disgrace. We have a corrupt attorney general in this state. You see how she does? This trial was railroaded and fast-tracked. This trial could have been brought years ago, but they waited till I was right in the middle of my campaign. The same with other trials and indictments. It's all run by DOJ, which is corrupt in Washington.
Well, corrupt to say the least. President Trump, you could see in his face how frustrated he is with this case. I wouldn't call him demoralized by any means, by the way. What I would call is President Trump focused and ready for vengeance. And that's what he wants. I'll tell you that. So the judge valued, as you know, in this last go around, Mar-a-Lago at $18 million. All you have to do is look at Zillow and see the homes next to Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach are worth $50, $60, $70 million, and they're not 1/10 of the size of Mar-a-Lago. President Trump talked about the judge and his ridiculous valuations.
We're Palm Beach County. The people that do this agree with us 100%, and they say the judge is wrong. The judge is wrong in his ruling. He valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million, and it's worth $1 billion, maybe $1.5 billion.
I believe it is probably worth $1 billion. Now, here's the amazing thing about this case, and I want everyone to realize this. President Trump is going before this judge. It's a non-jury. It's a judge trial. President Trump is going before this judge. There are no victims. So Letitia James, the radical attorney general there, says he somehow defrauded the banks by overvaluing his companies to get favorable loans. But let me tell you this, as a business owner who's never got a loan the size of President Trump, but I've gotten loans up into the millions of dollars. They don't just take your word for it. Do you not understand they have all kinds of appraisers and analysts and accountants that go through all of these things? And on huge projects like this, they go out and they literally put eyes on them and they evaluate them and value them. It's not just up to President Trump. There are huge teams of people to see if these loans should be given and if they're legitimate or not. So all the banks were paid back. All the interest was paid. There was no default on anything, yet Letitia James thinks this is a good idea to come and bring this case against President Trump after an appellate judge threw out about 80% of her case. Okay? President Trump talked about what's really at play here. Cut 2.
This is really now getting dirty between Jack Smith and between all of these DOJ people helping them along. This is a pure witch hunt for purposes of interfering with the elections of the United States of America. It's totally illegal. This judge should be disbarred. He shouldn't be allowed to be a judge.
Agreed. Now, it takes brass you-know-what to say that right before you're going to go face that judge who's going to determine your fate. They want to take away his ability to do business in New York. They want a receivership over many of his properties in New York City. This is outrageous. They're destroying this man literally because he's trying to make America great again. Now, you could see how frustrated he was there, but I wanted to play some sound bites from President Trump over the weekend where he was on fire. This man is on a rocket ship to the White House, I promise you. The energy surrounding his campaign is great, largely in part because of the speeches that he's giving and the rallies that he's throwing. It's absolutely fabulous. This is him talking about looters across the country that are going in and stealing stuff and his solution to the problem.
And we will immediately stop all of the pillaging and theft. Very simply, if you rob a store, you can fully expect to be shot as you are leaving that store. Shot.
So that's how most of us feel. You better believe that triggered everybody in the mainstream media. He was also great at making jokes like he always is. This one about Joe Biden's bad bribes, cut 12.
I had countries coming up to me, heads of everybody. I'd like to make a deal with you, sir. Biden would have made it. Hunter would have made it. They would have walked away with a fortune. I could have made, by the way, their deals are terrible, and they did nothing for them. But I could have walked away with billions. I said it's just the wrong thing to do. I told my kids that they'd be offered to do deals all over the place. Can't do it. I'm president. Can't do it.
That's the bottom line. You can't do it because you're president. And I guarantee you any president of the United States could be making billions of dollars of deals. And oh, by the way, I know one who's certainly making millions of dollars of deals. Turning now from what's funny about President Trump when he's making jokes to nothing funny about the situation on the border. You know, President Trump had the border secure for the most part, as good as it had ever been secured. I want to roll the video of El Paso, which is literally under siege, 15. It's under siege, and I will tell you, these people are headed to us. You can see the processing facility in El Paso, Texas. This has now become the center stage for illegal immigration. Our buddy Ben Berkwam, who has been so tremendous on covering this stuff, headed down there and asked, where are all these people going? Cut 16.
¿De dónde son? ¿De dónde son? Venezuela. ¿Dónde vas? Louisiana. San Antonio. Atlanta. De nada. ¿De dónde son? Venezuela. ¿A dónde vas? New York.
Going to New York. Sanctuary City, they're still giving them hotel rooms there. Even they're saying, please don't come. They're handing out flyers now in New York. Well, Ben Berkwam, America's Voice correspondent, host of Law and Border right here on this network, is down in Juarez, Mexico. Ben, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Grant, it's great to be with you, sir.
Well, it's great to see you, Ben. Why El Paso, Ben? It seems to be that these areas along the border change every 3 or 4 weeks or so about where they get hit hardest.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be some coordination between the U.S. government and what's happening in Mexico and the cartels, because this is all coordinated by the cartels. They basically control the Mexican government, and they kind of filter people where they want to go. I'll give you an example. When I arrived here, there was probably 200 people that were crossing illegally. You've got the Texas National Guard, you know, the performative art of setting up the razor wire over here, but all they have to do is walk down 100 yards and go underneath it. You can see the group behind me. They were waiting. They were being told they couldn't come in by the razor wire, and then lo and behold, the gate was open. Border Patrol led them in, and now they're taking them into America. But right after we got here and started reporting on this, the Mexican immigration officials started coming down, and these groups that were coming down, they started stopping them and telling them to go back. And what's really interesting is that only seems to happen when we're there, when we're showing it. And all that people do is they simply walk down another half mile and cross over there. So it's all a joke. It's all a lie. It's all an invasion. And we're paying for it. We're not only not paying to secure the border, we are paying to invite more people in. Hundreds of millions of dollars. El Paso's overrun. And the big question, Grant, is how did Veronica Escobar know this was going to happen 9 months before it did? El Paso historically has not seen this issue. 9 months before they started being invaded and overrun, Veronica Escobar came out and said El Paso is going to be the Ellis Island of America. How did she know if she wasn't in coordination with the cartels? And I think the answer is very clear. What is the answer, Ben? I think she is. I think she is. And sadly, I think many politicians in America are corrupted by the cartels. We know Mexico is basically a narco state run by the cartels. What we really need to do, besides defunding, we need to defund the United Nations, especially UNHCR. We need to defund all of these so-called charities, these NGOs that are profiting off this invasion. And we need to investigate every politician that is supporting the invasion. And I guarantee you, we're going to see direct funding coming from the cartels to these politicians, not just in Mexico, but in America as well.
You know, Ben, I'd be curious to get your response. I got a call from a very high-ranking member of the Border Patrol Union who was saying, please stop attacking the Border Patrol agents for cutting the razor wire fence. This was in Texas. I got this call over the weekend. I said, they shouldn't be cutting the fence. I said, you know I support these agents. I know their hands are tied. He said, well, they were just taking orders. Well, you and I know that the worst things in history have sometimes been because people were just taking orders. They loaded Jews onto trains, and yet people saying they were just taking orders. At some point, you've got to say, I'm not going to obey that order. That is Texas barbed wire fence. What I was told from the Border Patrol agent was that that is on U.S. soil, and that when the illegals come up to the barbed wire, they are tasked with arresting them. So they had to cut the fence. I said, Texas State Police ought to say, well, we're going to arrest anybody who cuts the fence. You ought to send a note or a lawsuit to the Biden administration saying, we're not going to cut the fence because we could be arrested in Texas and sue them, but you can't be cutting the fence. What is your response to the excuse that they're just taking orders? And I do know that the majority of Border Patrol agents want to be doing their job. I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I've got a lot of friends in Border Patrol. There are tons of patriots in Border Patrol. They love this country. They hate doing what they're doing. But you're right. At some point, they have to stand up and say, I will not comply. There has to be a point where they say, this is unconstitutional, what you're ordering me to do. Just like you have the option, or you have the authority, you have the duty to do in the military. If you're given unconstitutional orders, you have a duty to decline those orders. And I think at some point, you're going to have to do that. Border Patrol agents are going to have to do that. And you know, that it's just an excuse. It's one of those things. I hear it all the time. Well, I got to save my pension. I'm just taking orders. And like you said, I get that. I love the agents in Border Patrol, but at some point you got to stand up and say, no, I won't comply.
Yeah. Ben, you and the crew have been doing such great work down there. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing some of it with me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, absolutely. We'll be following this story. That story ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Every day it's a different disaster down there, and Ben and the gang will be there to cover it for us, I promise you. All right, folks, do me a favor. With the disaster after disaster after disaster, you ought to be protecting yourself with gold today, at least your financial portfolio. It is a great asset protection maneuver, especially when it comes to privacy. Our friends at Birch Gold can help you do that. Here's how you get in touch with them. You text America to the number 989898. I do know that hundreds, if not thousands, of Real America's Voice listeners have used Birch Gold to buy gold and other precious metals, including converting a traditional IRA into a precious metals IRA. There is a war on cash going on right now. And so what do you do to combat that? Well, one of the ways to combat it is to put your money into gold. Birch Gold can help you. Again, text America to the number 989898. That's America to the number 989898. Give our friends over at Birch Gold a contact. All right, folks. Los Angeles County has a new no bail policy, meaning you're let out on the street. Catch, cite, and release. Think that'll work out for them? Well, folks, in today's America run by Democrats, you have blue cities that are literally overrun with crime. And it's not even a talking point anymore. Now it is a life or death situation when it comes to the out of control crime in so many blue cities across America. Chicago over the weekend, do you know they had 40 shootings? 40 in the city of Chicago. Now, I'm going to tell you what it looks like, or at least show you what it looks like on the news on a basically nightly basis in Chicago. Watch this.
Gunfire erupted during a custom car show and sound competition.
There was also a bank robbery that happened in Madison.
Last night, 2 people riding tandem on an electric scooter were shot by someone in a white SUV.
At a shooting in a high-rise at 63 East Monroe. We're told an argument led to shots being fired.
They shoot the victim, a 31-year-old man by the name of Anton Benoit.
There's outrage and concern after a gun battle erupts when an armed robber attempts to hold up a man, fueling up his car.
That's what I'm talking about. Fueling up your car. Anybody could now be a victim in any one of these cities. Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, has decided to make matters even worse. They're now going with this no bail policy, which means it's basically catch, cite them, and release them. No bail, okay? This is out of control. 12 cities in Los Angeles County say it's so out of control they're suing Los Angeles County over this. Here's the police chief of one of those cities from Glendora. Watch.
The challenge that we, along with other cities in this area, are going to face is that it makes it very difficult when you arrest someone for an offense. You're forced to release them, whereas before you could have kept them in custody. And they go back out and they commit another crime, sometimes within hours, sometimes within a day. But it all affects the victims that are the victims of these crimes.
Look, you don't have to be a law enforcement expert or a chief or a sheriff or a cop to tell you when you arrest criminals and just let them back out on the streets, they're going to do what they do. That's commit crimes. Let me give you a little example of book and release. Book and release means you arrest them, you bring them back to the station house, you fingerprint them, mugshot them, and then you just release them. Distributing child pornography. Arranging a meeting with a minor to procure sexual exposure or a lewd act. Rioting, go figure, is book and release in Los Angeles County. Now, let me show you cite and release. Cite and release means you basically make the arrest on scene, but you just write them a ticket for it with a promise to appear. This is manufacturing a government document to conceal citizenship, all right? You're an illegal, you're going to fake a driver's license, just cite and release, you promise to show up, make a false bomb report. And here's the one that really gets me. If you advocate for killing or injuring a police officer, they literally write you a ticket. Well, to get reaction to all of this is the former sheriff of Los Angeles County. He's now running for board supervisor in that county. Alex Villanueva is with us. Sheriff, it's great to have you back on.
Oh, great to see you, Grant.
Sheriff, threatening to kill or injure a police officer, you're just supposed to write them a ticket and send them on their way?
That's the way the law reads, and it's scary. Cite and release, book and release, magistrate review, where they tell you, don't do it again, and then they let them go anyway. And these are some serious crimes we're talking about here.
What do you think is going to happen in L.A.? L.A. is already a crime-infested hellhole in many places, if not all places. What's going to happen?
Well, here's a hint. We take a look north at Yolo County, population 217,000. They did an actual study with real numbers. This is their results of zero bail schedule. This is August of 2022. 71% of increase of rearrest for violent crimes such as murder, attempt murder, kidnapping, robbery, carjacking, domestic violence. Wow. Individuals released on zero bail were rearrested for 163% more crimes compared to those released on bail. The average recidivism rate for those released on zero bail over 18 months was 78%, while those released on bail, it was only 46%. This is hard data that's valid that the sheriff of LA, the DA of LA, the chief of LAPD all decided not to share with the judge in the court back in May when this lawsuit about the cash bail system was being challenged. They all decided to go home and play hooky when they could have defended. And now here's the data that we have, and they're claiming the exact opposite, that somehow our recidivism rate is going to lower as we get rid of consequences for committing crime.
You know, the radicals on the left are telling us that bail is racist, that rich white people can pay their bail, but poor black or Hispanic folks can't. Now, I've been around this game for a long time. There are bail bondsmen. I don't know what this does to the bail bond industry, but bail bondsmen actually provided an extra layer, because not only did they owe the bail bondsman for the bail that they put up, but the bail bondsmen also wanted to get their money. They would ensure the criminal would show up. Is that correct, Sheriff?
That is 100% correct. And most importantly, the people that were eligible for the bail or the bond were people that had a job, that in whatever criminal involvement was one off from their normal habits. But the people now that are going to be set free are the ones that are career criminals that don't have a job. Their full-time job is being a criminal. So for them, they are dancing in the hallways on this one.
Tell me, you and I were discussing, I was out in L.A. this week and I had the pleasure of being with you out at our Salem Town Hall. It was a great event, by the way, and I appreciate you taking part in that. But you and I were talking about burglary. So if someone comes up and calls the cops, someone's breaking into their house, we're releasing this person?
Yes. So you talk about how devastating it is for a homeowner to have someone invade their privacy, their inner sanctum, and they're going to feel violated. The crook walks away, the cops arrest him, and they go to the station, and the judge says, oh, don't do it again, and they walk out the door scot-free. And then they could do this in Pomona in the morning, Pacoima in the afternoon, and Paramount in the evening, and all three are different jurisdictions, and no one's going to know what the other one did because the database is not there to catch up to the frequency that these career criminals commit crime.
It's frightening. On the face of it, it really is frightening. I feel for the people that are living in L.A. County and what is going to happen next. I do know if you were to get into the position of county supervisor, you could start to make some changes on this. And again, as they were when you were sheriff, the people of California would be safer for it. And I wish you good luck in that, Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Grant. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Always good to see you, my friend. All right, coming up after the break, Dr. Fauci's net worth exploded during the pandemic years. Go figure. What's behind that massive gain in wealth? We'll talk about it next. Folks, I want you to take a look at this headline over at the New York Post. It really says it all. Not much of a surprise, I guess. Dr. Anthony Fauci, wife Christine Grady, worth $11 million last year after he retired. Where is that coming from? Well, from the Post article, this is where they say the money came from. The wealth expansion came from mutual fund investments, awards, federal compensation increases, and royalties. The outlet reported, though Fauci has said he donates all of his royalties to charity. Well, let's just roll the clock back a little bit and listen to Senator Rand Paul ask Dr. Fauci about just that.
Everybody on the vaccine committee, have any of them ever received money from the people who make vaccines? Can you tell me that? Can you tell me if anybody on the vaccine approval committees ever received any money from people who make the vaccines?
Soundbite number one, are you going to let me answer a question? Okay, so let me give you some information. First of all, according to the regulations, people who receive royalties are not required to divulge them even on their financial statement, according to the Bayh-Dole Act.
See what a government deep stater refers to? According to the regulations that we created to protect us so you don't get to know, we don't have to tell you. That is the height of arrogance. This is why the deep state must be exposed. This is why the swamp must be drained. Well, joining me now is someone who makes a living exposing the deep state and the crazy money running through Washington and all over the country, for that matter. The CEO of Open the Books, Adam Andrzejewski, is back with us. Adam, great to have you back.
Well, it's great to be here, Grant. Thanks for having me back.
Well, what do you make of Fauci saying he donates the royalties to charity, but then he's got this huge increase in net worth? He was making almost $500,000 a year of salary. Now, that's a great salary, but it doesn't get you to $11 million a year net worth.
So we're subject matter experts on this. That New York Post column was premised on the findings of our auditors at openthebooks.com. And so the two Fauci, here's what people don't know. The two Faucis, Dr. Anthony Fauci and his wife, Christine Grady, while Fauci out-earned the president of the United States, his wife out-earned the vice president. She's the chief bioethicist at Fauci's employer, the National Institutes of Health. So if you add both of their taxpayer-paid salaries together, you tack on the cost of federal benefits, and the two Faucis every single year, Grant, clean off at taxpayer expense nearly $1 million a year. And then he's got other income streams on top of that.
All right. And this idea of royalties, do you think he really was? Is there any way to track whether or not they've been going to charity or whether he's been socking them away?
So Dr. Anthony Fauci probably doesn't have material third-party royalties from pharmaceutical companies. However, just as soon as Joe Biden was inaugurated, Fauci got permission from his employer, the National Institutes of Health, to collect a $1 million award from a foreign nonprofit, the Dan David Foundation in Israel, for speaking truth to power during the Trump years, for defending science during the Trump years. Fauci got to keep $901,000 of that award.
So when he tells Rand Paul, we don't have to disclose what we're making, and we don't have to tell all of you, that's a problem. Is there any push to turn back the cover on that and say, hey, let's open up and shed some light on what government officials are really making in Washington?
So Fauci, in that hearing, misled the senator. He misled Congress. He misled the American people. This summer, right here in August at openthebooks.com, we forced the National Institutes of Health for the first time since 2005 to tell us the name of the companies who paid the individual scientists third-party royalties. And there's a lot of conflicts of interest in the data. For example, the top vaccine maker at the National Institutes of Health, who worked in Fauci's lab, starting in 2018, he started to receive third-party royalties from Moderna. And then this scientist sat on Operation Warp Speed, and obviously they choose the vaccines during the pandemic and set vaccine pandemic policy. But nobody knew at the time that he was on the payroll of Moderna. So that's just one conflict of interest, and Fauci was covering for the whole complex.
All right, just to back you up on this, I've got a clip of the CEO of Moderna admitting much of this. Watch this.
Indeed, we recently made, before Christmas last year, a $400 million payment to the NIH for an old patent that they had developed, not related to COVID, but useful in the development of a COVID vaccine to pay them for their work. It's for the U.S. government to assess how that money should be used.
Do you think it creates a conflict of interest for the same people deciding the policy of how often we have to take the vaccine to also be making money the more times we take the vaccine? Yes or no?
This is for the government to decide.
The answer is yes. $400 million if you didn't hear it at home, Adam.
Yeah, well, obviously during the pandemic, many people started to think that big government was very close to big pharma. And we focused at openthebooks.com over the course of the last 2 years on the dogfight, the knockdown, drag-out dogfight to open the books on that third-party paid royalty database. And we've had to sue NIH with our lawyers at Judicial Watch, and we're making real progress. We know how much money was paid. We know the 2,409 scientists that received the royalties. And now we know the companies who paid the royalties. Here's what we still don't know, and we're in federal court this fall. We don't know what was invented. They're blacking out, redacting the license number and patent number, and we don't know the amounts to the individual scientists like Fauci, like Francis Collins, like others in leadership, and the 2,409 scientists at the agency.
Well, I know when you get that information, you'll come back and tell us, because we'll be curious to find out all the answers to those questions. Adam Andrzejewski, I apologize for using the New York Post headlines. It's really Open the Books headlines I should have been using, and you get the credit on that one. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, thank you, Grant. Yeah, they're a great newspaper. They cover a lot of our work.
Absolutely. Hey, team effort, I say, when it comes to all this stuff. We're all in it together. We get the information out. In the end, who cares how it's disseminated, as long as it's disseminated to the people that need to hear it, and that is all of you. All right, coming up, Waffle House employees are demanding a gigantic increase to their minimum wage. Oh, boy. I'll tell you how much next.
Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has cut short the speculation over who he would pick to replace the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. In a bit of a surprise, he chose LaFonza Butler, a black and lesbian abortion activist and pal of Vice President Harris. Controversy followed because she has been living in Maryland, but swears she will move back before taking the job. Former President Donald Trump and his kids are expected in a New York court today for the start of their business fraud trial. He plans to defend his management of Trump Incorporated. After Congress approved a 45-day spending bill averting a government shutdown, a leadership war opened in the House. Speaker Kevin McCarthy's fighting words were to bring it on. And the Powerball jackpot crept above $1 billion last night, putting today's total at $1.04 billion. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
We demand $25 an hour. For all workers, all cooks, and all servers.
That is an employee at a Waffle House in Atlanta, Georgia, demanding $25 an hour. So I looked at the menu of Waffle House. Do you know a 2-egg breakfast costs you $5.20? It's a pretty good deal. Actually, the food's pretty good at Waffle House. I always enjoyed it there. $25 an hour? Well, it's no longer going to cost you $5.20 for a 2-egg breakfast. If labor is 20% of your cost, you're looking at $1 per plate. You're going to have to sell 25 of these 2-egg breakfasts to pay for 1 hour of work. What happens when it's 11 or 12 in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and not everybody's coming in? It's not going to work. The math doesn't add up. Sorry, folks, not happening. That's going to do it for us today. Stinchfield's Army rolls. Thanks to you. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.